Welcome to the Runway, where we cover current events in crypto, Web3, and tech. Today's Runway covers YouTube AI moderation policies, FTX wind down, Commerzbank's crypto custody license, Microsoft's Maya AI processor reveal, blockchain voting, and some Bitcoin macro topics. It's Wednesday, November 15th. Let's take off. First up, we have a story about YouTube requiring disclosure of AI-generated content and adding labels. It will now allow anyone whose image was used in a fake video to request it to be removed. YouTube is adding new rules surrounding content generated or manipulated by artificial intelligence, including labeling requirements. The Google-owned video platform announced Tuesday in a blog post that it will be rolling out a series of updates over the next few months, including requiring creators to disclose whether their content has been AI-generated upon uploading it, which will add a label to the video alerting viewers. YouTube gave the example of AI-generated videos realistically depicting a purported event that never happened or showing a person saying or doing something they didn't, adding that this is especially important in cases where the content discusses sensitive topics such as elections, ongoing conflicts, and public health crisis, or public officials. Creators who repeatedly failed to disclose AI-generated content under the new rules face having their content taken down from YouTube, the company said. The video platform said it is also going to begin allowing people to request the removal of AI content that simulates an identifiable individual, including the use of their face or voice, through the company's privacy request process. However, not all their requests will be honored. Not all content will be removed from YouTube, and will consider a variety of factors when evaluating these requests. The blog post reads, "This could include whether the content is parody or satire, whether the person making the request can be uniquely identified, or whether it features a public official or well-known individual, in which case there may be a higher bar." YouTube also said that it would be building responsibility into its AI tools and features. My take on this is that this is largely a good thing to have a disclosure regime in place if there is content that's AI generated. I'm not sure how successful they will be at enforcing this and what really qualifies as AI generated content. Where's the sort of the bar there? Is Photoshop? It's using something like Photoshop AI. It doesn't have to be a large language model. So we definitely need to see some more specifics on this topic. Reading over this article, that seems like there's a lot of things in here that are a little bit suspect. When it comes to how this evaluation will be done, it doesn't seem like it's fully fleshed out yet, and whether there will be bias in the enforcement of it, which is it seems to be a very common thing with a lot of these big tech companies. There's just incredible bias and selective agendas at play when they decide what content violates something and what sort of doesn't. So it would be definitely nice to have a very clear line in the sand when it comes to these new policies. But largely, disclosure is a good thing. Next up, bankrupt FTX wants to sell 100 million of crypto per week. Will the SEC stop it? With the cryptocurrency markets rising, the failed exchange is preparing to sell billions of digital assets held in its coffers. That's great for customers, but problematic for regulators. Current FTX CEO John Ray and SEC Chair Gary Gensler could find themselves at odds over FTX's plan to sell crypto to repay creditors. A year has passed since FTX failed, long enough for U.S. prosecutors to get a conviction of Sam Bankman-Fried, its disgraced founder. While that may offer some cold comfort to about 1 million creditors with funds tied up in the company's bankruptcy, what would be better is to get some of their money back. Current FTX leadership under CEO John Ray has recovered more than $7 billion of what was originally a missing $8.7 billion, and the company has sufficient assets to pay customers most of what they are owed. According to Forbes analysis, FTX is sitting on about $2.6 billion of Solana and Bitcoin and another $1.7 billion in other cryptos. In September, the company received judicial approval to start liquidating recovered crypto, and it has transferred $100 million plus worth of Solana to major exchanges such as Binance, Coinbase, and Kraken. That kind of transaction is often a sign that a crypto owner is preparing to sell. There is one potential roadblock, and it is a big one. The Securities and Exchange Commission is not fond of cryptocurrency trading as it is currently practiced in the United States. It is suing Binance and Coinbase, claiming they are acting as financial exchanges when they are not licensed to do so, and that digital assets they list are unregistered securities. The SEC asserts that the exchanges should fall under its regulatory purview, and that most existing cryptocurrencies should be considered unregistered securities. Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong is in a fight with the SEC about the legality of his exchange's operations under the current law. The agency has already intervened in one bankruptcy case, objecting to the Voyager Digital's brokerage's plan in March to sell crypto on Binance's U.S. subsidiary. And even though the judge in that case disagreed, it is possible that the regulator may try again with FTX. An SEC spokesperson declined to comment on the agency's stance, and FTX did not respond when asked about the transaction by email. Whether the SEC should be in charge of cryptocurrency is an open question. Congress has been unable to decide how to deal with an asset class that has existed for only 15 years, and although there are multiple lawsuits working their way through the court system that may decide the case, none will be resolved in time to provide clarity for the FTX case. Ironically, this leaves the regulator potentially delaying payments to customers that it failed to protect before the exchange went belly up. This raises two questions. Will the SEC try to gum up the liquidation plan? If it does, can it succeed? The SEC really should not be telling people when they can buy or sell their assets. And if they can buy or sell their assets, they should just be a neutral party and all of that. This has sort of been decided in the judiciary already. They've lost multiple cases, and it seems like they're going to lose a lot more if they keep trying to step outside of basically abusing their power and overstepping their mandate. I don't think preventing creditors from getting their payouts from bankrupt companies is really what they should be doing. They should be trying to help facilitate this. Since FTX declared bankruptcy, there is going to be this sell pressure on the market, whether people like it or not, unless they allow customers to simply take custody of the assets themselves, which I think is probably the better option. Sort of figure out what assets sort of belonged to certain customers and maybe allow them in lieu of taking their 90% or 80%, whatever the recovery estimate is, if they would like to withdraw that and hold the crypto itself, that should be an option. I'm not super familiar with how bankruptcy processes work, but I think that would ultimately be the best option to give the creditors the choice of how they would like to receive their payouts. But I think this is largely a exercise in futility by the SEC here, especially after Voyager, the judge in the Voyager case already, basically allowed the bankrupt company to liquidate its assets. Next up, we have Commerzbank granted crypto custody license in Germany. Commerzbank says the development now gives it full authority for custody of crypto assets, enabling it to offer further digital asset services. The German bank Commerzbank has been granted a crypto custody license by local regulators, according to a November 15th announcement by the lender. Commerzbank says it is the first full-service German bank to be granted this license in the country under the legal framework of the German Banking Act. This allows it to offer custody of crypto assets and will enable it to offer further digital asset services. Jorg Oliveri del Castillo Scholz, Chief Operating Officer of Commerzbank, said that the acquiring the license is an important milestone. The bank said its first step now is to establish a platform that is both secure and reliable and fully complies with local regulations while supporting its institutional clients through crypto custody services via blockchain. Cointelegraph reached out to Commerzbank for further information on the development. The crypto landscape in Germany has gained significant momentum over the last year. In March, Deutsche Wertpapier Service Bank launched its WP Next crypto trading platform, offering 1,200 banks and savings banks in Germany access to the digital asset industry. There's also a little note here about United States crypto custody firm BitGo receiving a license from the German Federal Financial Supervisor Authority to expand its compliance with local regulations after 3 years of operating its dedicated local subsidiary. I think this is largely, bullish news on a global stage and sort of follows the macro trend we're seeing here of other locales and locations sort of embracing this new technology well before the United States does. And a lot of these first movers that are first to embrace the technology are going to benefit, and then you're going to attract more companies and have more business. This has been a common theme. Instead of fighting the industry, the SEC and the government and the powers to be should be working to sort of attract more jobs, bring more opportunities, and to help move things along. Hopefully we'll see that in the future. Next up, Microsoft announces custom AI chip that could compete with NVIDIA. Microsoft will give its Azure cloud clients more choices for standard computing workloads and artificial intelligence following market leader Amazon. Microsoft unveiled 2 chips at its Ignite conference in Seattle on Wednesday. Its Maya 100 artificial intelligence chip could compete with NVIDIA's highly sought-after AI graphics processing units. The second, a Cobalt A100 ARM chip, is aimed at general computing tasks and could compete with Intel processors, so basically CPUs. Cash-rich technology companies have begun giving their clients more options for cloud infrastructure they can use to run applications. Alibaba, Amazon, and Google have done this for years. Microsoft, with about $144 billion in cash at the end of October, had 21.5% cloud market share in 2022, behind only Amazon, according to one estimate. Virtual machine instances running on the Cobalt chips will become commercially available through Microsoft's Azure cloud in 2024. Rani Borkar, a corporate vice president, told CNBC in an interview she did not provide a timeline for releasing the Maya 100. Google announced its original tensor processing unit for AI in 2016. Amazon Web Services revealed its Graviton ARM-based chip and Inferentia AI processor in 2018 and announced Trainium for training models in 2020. Special AI chips from cloud providers could be able to meet demand when there's a GPU shortage, but Microsoft and its peers in cloud computing aren't planning to let companies buy servers containing their chips, unlike NVIDIA or AMD. You won't actually physically be able to purchase these chips. It sort of will be an in-house thing at Microsoft data centers, similar to some of the other companies that have done this as well in the cloud computing marketplace. It's interesting to see more competition arise. NVIDIA recently just released an H200, which will be releasing soon, which will be the upgrade over the H100 at some point in the future here. And it's nice to see other competition and other companies sort of wading into the AI arms race here. Next up, we have a story here about Coinbase. Kind of goes a little bit in light with our earlier story. Coinbase cuts crypto investment amid wider VC pullback. I think this is, obviously as we're in a more bearish market cycle and there's more attention on AI and other tech things, we're seeing a little bit of a sort of a pullback when it comes to funding crypto and Web3 companies. Also, given the landscape here in the US, there's been, quite a few problems with the environment here. And I think that's confirmed here if we read through this. Coinbase cuts crypto investment amid wider VC pullback. Coinbase, among the chief investors in the cryptocurrency sector, has reportedly reduced its startup funding. The pullback is part of a larger decline in investments at crypto firms, many of whom have their own venture capital operations, Bloomberg News reported Wednesday. And then I think the most important part is right here. As for Coinbase, the Bloomberg report said that the company has switched to backing more startups outside of the U.S. amid increased scrutiny by American regulators. Increased scrutiny is an understatement here. I would say, active antagonism by American regulators. We are seeing some companies and founders who have great ideas, and they're saying, okay, I need to extract the U.S. from my business plan and not serve U.S. customers, which is a shame, said Huli Tejwani, Coinbase's director of corporate development and ventures. This is extremely concerning and goes to show that the SEC and a lot of these regulatory bodies are really, really failing, U.S. consumers and the citizens of the United States. And it's really disappointing to read this, that a lot of companies are creating opportunities outside of the U.S. instead of here, where historically we've been the leader in technology and startups. This is part of a larger theme, a larger macro theme that sort of has been playing out. Next up, a tweet here, which continues on this issue. When we look here and we kind of see this big wall in this tweet thread here from Bitcoin Magazine, you see this big wall of sort of like regulatory approval, sort of keeping all of the big players from adding capital and allocating capital to the space, to Bitcoin and to other Web3 and tech startups. This was interesting to kind of visualize and think about the quantity of something. If 21 million people wanted Bitcoin, theoretically, they could all have one. If everyone does, we could all have 0.0026250. If everyone does from what's left, we could all have 0.000182220. So that's saying like what's left to be mined over the next 120 years. 18,220 Satoshis. Let that sink in. So for reference, 18,220 sats today is $6.44 USD, 989 AUD, 5.16 GBP, and it sort of lists off all the other fiat currencies here below. Next up, as a miner myself and having a background in mining, I thought this was an interesting post. Highlights sort of an issue potentially with Bitcoin. Chris Bleck here says, I need you to understand something about Bitcoin. It's important. It isn't FUD. It's just the reality of things. The two largest Bitcoin mining pools, together controlling over 50% of hash rate for over 1 year now, are regulatory compliant and require all miners to comply with KYC. The government has clear identification, visibility, and control over more than 50% of Bitcoin miners by hash rate. The government can make demands of these people companies, and they'll be ready to comply. As this trend grows, Bitcoin's decentralization and game theory both get affected in a negative fashion. This needs to be an urgent topic of discussion within the Bitcoin community. I do agree that this topic absolutely should be discussed. This pool here, Foundry, is located in the US. And if we look at sort of these pool distributions here, we see the big pink one is Foundry, and then the one next to it is Antpool. Between Foundry and Antpool, there's tons of miners on these two pools. People like to use the larger pools usually just because more consistent rewards day in and day out. They get more blocks. You get less share per block, but you sort of get a more consistent revenue stream. Although F2 pool and via BTC and a lot of these other pools will also get tons of rewards. What people need to understand about all this is this idea that miners can just switch to a different pool. So if this ever does become a problem, it's very easy within a couple, say me to move my 100 miners that are on Foundry's pool and switch them over to so not a super big problem. I think the idea of KYCing mining companies is just absolutely ridiculous and antithetical to sort of everything that Bitcoin stands for. So I really am not a huge fan of that. I don't know why Foundry is going along with that, and they're a US based pool, and I think they should. I think that's a bad idea, and then Ant Pool as well, not a good idea. But obviously in this market we have selection and choice, and we can easily decide to move if we'd like. Next up. For the first time ever, those rules would give the federal government a roving mandate to micromanage nearly every aspect of how the internet functions. FCC commissioner sounds the alarm about coming Biden takeover of the internet. So I pulled this article here to kind of discuss this. FCC commission sounds the alarm about the coming Biden takeover of the internet. While Americans have been fixated on the Swift-Kelsey romance and wondering what really happened to Matthew Perry, the Biden administration has quietly made an audacious move to take over the internet as we know it and regulate it in the name equity. That's right. The fate of the internet as we know it hangs in the balance. And it's set to come to a vote at the Federal Communications Commission on November 15th. FCC Commissioner Brandon Carr earlier lambasted the Biden administration for its attempted internet takeover in a memorandum on the Wednesday meeting. So last month, President Biden gave the FCC its marching orders, Carr said. The president called on the FCC to implement a one-page section of the 2021 Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act by adopting new rules of breathtaking scope, all in the name of digital equity. For the first time ever, those rules would give the federal government a roving mandate to micromanage nearly every aspect of how the internet functions, from how ISPs allocate capital and where they build, to the services that consumers can purchase, from the profits that ISPs can realize and how they market and advertise services, to the discounts and promotions that consumers can receive. Talk about central planning. Needless to say, Congress never contemplated the sweeping regulatory regime that President Biden asked the FCC to adopt, let alone authorize the agency to implement it. He added, nonetheless, the commission will vote next week on November 15th to put President Biden's plan in place. A draft of the FCC order implementing President Biden's plan is available here. I oppose the plan for several reasons. The FCC commissioner then laid out the reasons he opposes the Biden internet takeover, namely President Biden's plans hands the administrative state effective control of all internet services and infrastructure in the country. He notes that the text of the order expressly provides that the FCC would be empowered for the first time to regulate each and every ISP's network infrastructure deployment, network reliability, network upgrades, network maintenance, customer premises equipment and installation, speeds, capacities, latency, data caps, throttling, pricing, promotional rates, imposition of late fees, opportunity for equipment rental, installation time, contract renewal terms, service termination terms, and use of customer credit and account history, mandatory arbitration clauses, pricing, deposits, discounts, customer service, language options, credit checks, marketing or advertising, contract renewal, upgrades, account termination, transfers to any other covered entity, and service suspension. As exhausting as it is to read that list, the FCC itself said it is not an exhaustive list. Carr continues. The Biden administration's plan empowers the FCC to regulate every aspect of the internet sector for the first time ever. The plan is motivated by an ideology of government control that is not compatible with the fundamental precepts of free market capitalism. But it gets worse, he adds. I'm not sure how it can get much worse than this. The FCC reserves the right under this plan to regulate both actions and omissions, whether recurring or a single instance. In other words, if you take any action, you may be liable, and if you do nothing, you may be liable. There's no path to complying with this standard list regime. It reads like a planning document drawn up in the faculty lounge of a university's Soviet Studies department. Carr also extensively fact-checked the alleged myths being put out by the Biden administration to further its bid to tightly regulate the internet. In his fact-check, Carr notes the hysterical claims at the end of net neutrality turned out to be just that, hysterical claims. So it looks like this is an executive order that Biden issued in February, stating his administration's intention to regulate the internet based on the goals of promoting diversity and equity. Whatever that means. This is a highly concerning, just a massive expansion of government power. This should absolutely not be considered, and it's disgusting to even read that article, and very Orwellian even to look at the limits that they're going, and that they've already done in a lot of other instances where there are so many rules, regulations, laws, things that it makes it impossible for the average individual to even understand and even defend. If they accidentally violate some of these things, it's kind of like this trump card they get over you, similar to how the IRS operates, where they've got thousands and thousands and thousands and just pages of things. The tax returns I have to file is like written in Chinese. I can't understand a single thing on any of those lines. And, I'm just hoping, praying that, my accountants did what they were supposed to do. And, the bookkeeping was done correctly. It's like, how do you even understand that? Damn near impossible. Even this reads very similar for ISPs and internet service providers. Next up, I wanted to look at something that sort of goes in line with this topic. And this was a article by, I think, I saw some sort of troubling. This was making its rounds on Twitter with Nikki Haley wanting to make you use your real name on social media. The 2024 GOP presidential candidate Nikki Haley wants to abolish anonymity on the internet. In a recent appearance on Fox News, Haley said that if she were to become president, her second priority, after forcing the platforms to disclose their algorithms, would be to require name verification of all social media users. It's a national security threat, she said. It gets rid of the Russian bots, the Iranian bots, and the Chinese bots, and then you're going to get some civility when people know their name is next to what they say. Lest anyone wonder whether this clip was taken out of context, she reiterated the pledge in a statement to Washington Examiner correspondent Byron York. She also articulated the same plan in a recent podcast appearance. One of the other participants, who goes by the name Comfortably Smug on X, was notably perturbed. Haley's enthusiasm for de-anonymizing social media is deeply misguided. I could not agree more. First of all, social media companies have the right to grant their users anonymity. The First Amendment prevents the federal government from meddling with the speech policies of private tech companies. If X or Facebook want to require users to verify themselves, they can do so, but the government can't force them. Merely stating that anonymity is a natural security threat does not void the Constitution. Moreover, anonymity is a cherished aspect of political speech, and rightly so. Sometimes people have important truths to tell, but for various reasons cannot risk attaching their names to their words, as noted by Governor Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy, two of Haley's rivals for the GOP nomination. Anonymous speech was an integral part of the U.S.'s founding. James Madison published the Federalist Papers under a pseudonym, for instance. Very interesting. Given that the authors of the Constitution made abundant use of anonymous speech, it should not be surprising that Haley's proposal is blatantly unconstitutional. It is also a terrible idea. Many Americans are concerned about online privacy. They don't want to force social media companies to collect their data on behalf of the federal government. Very much agree here. Terrible idea. We're seeing terrible ideas and authoritarian sort of proclivities from both sides of the aisle. Deeply disturbing, deeply unconstitutional from both sides of the aisle here. And that brings me to my next post. Was actually pretty awesome. And another post by Pete Rizzo. First Bitcoin user Hal Finney defending the Cypherpunk'd ethos exactly 31 years ago. His most iconic quote, "The computer can be used as a tool to liberate and protect people rather than to control them." And this was Hal Finney, November 16th, 1992. For many of those who don't know who Hal Finney is, he was a very early cypherpunk and someone who sort of helped very early on with Bitcoin and was one of, I believe, the first transaction on Bitcoin was actually Satoshi sending Hal 10 Bitcoin. He had ALS and just slowly degraded over time, and sadly he passed many years back. But a lot of things he said are very interesting, and some of the predictions he made sort of came true many years later, which is very interesting to see. Very brilliant and bright individual. Next up, I have a post here by CJK. And he said here that Bitcoin is the reserve asset of the internet economy and the most pristine form of collateral in the world. Today's marketplace ignores this reality and lacks true innovation. So it sort of discusses a problem. A 30-year fixed rate mortgage is 8%. Imagine getting a 30-year fixed rate mortgage and pledging some Bitcoin collateral to secure a 4% rate. Imagine having the optionality to execute a self-repaying mortgage. As the value of your Bitcoin collateral increases through each 4-year halving cycle / paydown, you can either pay down or reduce. While the vast majority of the marketplace is busy digitizing TradFi debt products, the future of finance is being built around Bitcoin equity. Never before seen products and services will soon be coming to market to empower you, my fellow plebs. So I think this was a very cool idea and article, and actually wrote an article for one of our local papers here that said the exact same thing. Bitcoin can solve a lot of problems when it comes to mortgages as sort of this collateral asset. Even if it isn't underlying fully backing the mortgage itself, it could act as an extra sort of collateral security blanket to basically maybe have someone post up to maybe get a better rate, and that Bitcoin would maybe sit in a smart contract or sit in a custody account. And only come into play if there was a default or something on the mortgage, basically as an added element of sort of collateral, which I think is perfect for what Bitcoin is, and it's a perfect solution to that based off of its monetary characteristics and principles. Let's see if we can refresh it here. The next halving cycle, every 4 years, we'll have a new halving, essentially, and the supply of Bitcoin that's being created will be cut in half. I sort of foresee this having less of a market effect because most of the supply of Bitcoin will largely already be mined, and it will have less of as like a supply shock on the market, and this is sort of by design of the system itself. Over these next 8 to 12 to 16 years, I think we're going to see some of the final large supply shock effects from that halving cycle. Obviously, this is all speculation, theory, and opinion, but it's just something interesting to think about. And if you think about it logically, it sort of makes sense. So that's all I got for you guys today. Stay safe, stay blessed, never stop learning, and keep an open mind. Thanks for listening.